Yeah. So so I want to begin our conversation here as we get into your good work by asking about something that I know that we're all getting fatigued by, which is talking about COVID and this pandemic. But how did you survive that time period? How did you get through it? And how did it change the way that you do things now?
Good question. We go through it because there's no plan B.
Yeah.
So, so, blindfolded or otherwise, feel your way through the wall, and navigate, but continually adapt, have a team. And at the time I had, as people come and go, but the team that was around us in COVID was really good. And, as they continue to be, but there was particularly, I had a person who was very gifted and used to be a former television producer. And she was like, well, you can't have events anymore. Let's go and do them virtually as everyone else starts to gear up and start doing things. And so that's exactly what we did. From going from a model of in-person events where we would have a private chef and the story of the champagnes we were importing were always about breaking. And one of the myths that you break is that, hey, champagne is not a cocktail, for crying out loud. This good quality champagne is the is the ace in the hole, that to pair with any part of the meal that you're serving. And so we would demonstrate that by giving a bottle to, the chef, and the chef would come up with a particular meal, and we would all. So these events were great. But when COVID came crashing in, we went virtually. And so I would still have a chef come and prepare a dish. And when we do it in market, it was easier because people could pick up the dish and they'd pick up a bottle, and then they would come back and we would rally on one particular day to zoom in and have this experience. It got to a point where the dish, when we did enough planning, we could cold, send and ship to other markets. So we had people in other markets also tuning in. And I never wanted to be the person continually talking during this hour. So that's why we brought in the chef. Chef, what's your, how do you put it all together? And now let's experience it together with everyone who would be here. And I also got music involved because, I wanted to have that element. How the champagne kind of affects all the senses. And so if we couldn't do this in person, let's just add as much that as we could virtually. And so I had the privilege of I had some American Idol finalists. I had voice participants who went far, and the only other people besides chefs like that were starved for their trade were musicians. And
Yeah.
so, sure, gave them a bottle, and so for an hour we would have a fantastic conversation about culture, about music, about cuisine, and about wine, and you talk about champagne and wines, you're talking about so many aspects. This is why I love it. So many aspects of our lives are touched by it: history, culture, chemistry, sustainability, climate, logistics, and and good food, good company, good friends. So that made for like an hour that would go by like that, and people would say like, honestly, this is my therapy for the month. Do this more often, please. Keep doing this, but don't stop. Do it more. And I'm like, that's all we can do really, to do this like once a month with everything we were trying to do otherwise, and selling bottles and such. But we have a great, from that since, a great following. And yeah, that's where COVID just kind of, anything in our, on the journey that poses a challenge, you've got to rely on, you know, it's a hero's journey. So you rely on the tools that you have, you rely on the guide, and the mentors and advisors around you to help navigate. And you are, you are headed towards some destination, and perseverance is what gets you there. This attitude of, um, perseverance is a very strong word. So I use it in a particular context that says you don't arrive at the destination exhausted. You are, with perseverance towards a daily routine, you arrive at some future version of yourself that ideally is better, one that you've envisioned, and that you say, this is where I'm headed, and I will persevere so I can drop the keys off and say to my future self, ding, there you go. I took care of the bus. Now you keep it going.
So, as an organic wine importer and a vino expert, I want to ask you this. If I put you in front of a bunch of third graders at career day and they wanted to know exactly what you did on a daily basis, how would you answer them?
I'm like Marco Polo, right? So I'm opening up trade routes and I get to travel on a boat, or in this case, a plane, and I arrive in a fantastic other village, across the world, in France, in rolling hills. And I meet with, the people from that place, indigenous people with their dirt underneath their fingernails and who are creating beautiful, a beautiful product called champagne and elixir, and it's not given to the king or sold, to a mass producer. These are the farmers who hold back their crop and say, "Oh no, I'm not selling this. I'm going to make my own juice. I'm not selling it for the, to the larger, for the mass. I'm not just growing my harvest and having someone else make the wines." When you buy these champagnes, you're actually supporting one farmer and one family. And so I find these small production totally authentic and incredible, um, families, sling them on my shoulder, bring them back on a boat, and then share them with your parents, and reward their routines of raising you, of providing for you, and keeping themselves in check in terms of health, while they all fixate on a particular future version of themselves. These champagnes are the reward for that routine.
So those kids are going to have to think you have the coolest gig in the world. So I got to know, when you were in the third grade in their position, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I wanted, well, I guess I've always been a bit of a sci-fi geek, and so a true father figure for me at the time was always Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
And so I think that's not too far, that I always wanted to be an explorer. I always wanted to be a bridge. I always wanted to be a connector. Um, I always wanted to be someone that was the the gateway to some new experiences. So that has been a theme throughout all my life. I am French and American. I was born in the U.S., but I'm a French citizen. My children now are French citizens. I do that through my father, and half our family still live in France. And so that connection has always been a mantra, theme, recurring touchstone, on my journey. It's also part of my utility belt now, and it's now inside. It's part of the utility belt of my children, who have adopted the same kind of. It's an amazing gift to be able to pass along a cultural heritage and pass along a capability. In this case, when you learn another language, you are instantly exposed to a whole different history, and rich as a French, history is in terms of the language, the culture, its own music, and its own cultural impact. We think that English is ubiquitous and American culture is everywhere, and it is, but it's in many places outside of this country, it's very thin. It's just a veneer, and underneath it are the own habits, traditions, and particular customs, that are wildly different, wildly rich, and make life in the tapestry like worth touching, knowing, and leveraging in life.
So speaking of passing this on to your children, let's go back to your childhood. Where were you born and raised, and what were the foundational elements that were planted into you that has made you such a connoisseur of wine and an entrepreneur and a visionary?
Well, it's definitely a strong family connection. I was born in Buffalo, New York, and I remember early on this divided family, a family that, lived, half of the family lived in France, and the other half lived in the US. And sometimes that family from France would visit. We would have big reunions in towns like Suffern, New York, which is in Rockland County, which is not far from New York City. And we would have multi-generational, family reunions. And I just I loved, and at the same time was like, what is this other language that's being spoken? And I was around 7, 9, and even 10, and so forth. And I could see other cousins near my age speaking with the people I held most dear in my life at the time, my grandparents on my father's side, and was like, I love these people, and yet they're turning around and speaking another language and communicating in a way that I can't understand. And I kind of lived with that, jealousy and of my cousins and was like, okay, I don't like this feeling. I'm going to conquer, or I'm going to go get this, what they have. And it took a long while. And it was, my father, God bless him, he's a great guy, but he wasn't, as most fathers are. It's very hard to pass along paternally the language. We all speak usually our maternal language. It's because, we're read at night, or stepmotherly kind of affection and love and so forth. And, my dad showered me with it as well, but just not the language part. He's like, look, I'm too busy here providing and building, what I need to do here. If you want to go learn this, but I can't help you. I'm too busy. Okay, fine. So I learned what little I did from my grandparents until I went and lived over there myself and studied. And then, had deep connections during my experience living in France with both my family and other friends of my family that were a big influence on me. And, you know, brought back, it became fluent, but it's a muscle. If you don't work it, it starts to decrease. And it wasn't until we had kids that I was shown a model, particularly, and we were fortunate enough to be able to afford, a jeune fille au pair, a young au pair from France who would live with us in our home as we raised our family when we had kids. And that was a big element of having French in the home, regenerating my ability to speak, even though every year since studying that, I would go back, but 1, 2 weeks, it's not enough. Having someone in the house speaking French, and then telling the kids, like, if you want anything until mommy comes home, because we both work, you'll starve unless you can ask for it in French. Do you understand what daddy's saying? And they'd be like, oh no, they would complain, but they would do it.
Yeah.
And the
Wow.
au pair was like right on the same page.
Yeah. So who's been a hero for you? Who's been an inspiration for your work?
Who's been an inspiration from? Well, I mean, the people themselves who are making the product are a huge inspiration.
Yeah.
And um, I came to this really, I had a career, several careers in hospitality, another career building software fintech company. And I was also at one point, the French American Chamber of Commerce. I mean, so these again have been themes for the southeast of the U.S. And I just got to a point in life where the France was always a connection, always nurturing. How can I, make these connections beyond myself and impact more people through it? The Chamber of Commerce kind of helped quite a bit, but I started, as we all age, I started getting headaches from drinking champagne. Like, this is a beverage I love, and I was like, wait a minute, this can't fly. Why? And then you start to realize like just what you're drinking. And I had the good fortune of being able to travel with my family, my parents, sister, family in the Champagne region in 2018. And we went to a big house like one does. If you're fortunate enough to go, I recommend you go to a large house, like a large champagne house, the kinds that, everyone knows and you can find in the grocery store. And they do a great job. You should go to a big house like that because they explain it in English and it's like a Disneyland kind of effect, this presentation. And you get to learn how champagne is made. And you're like, wow. And then great. So we had that experience, and I was wanting to show my family, let's go deeper. Let's go find some of these farmers who aren't selling to the big houses and see what they do, with their own. And I found a French database and was able to explore, get addresses, and I said, okay, let's all go. And the first one was decidedly mid. It just wasn't all that great. And I'm like, okay. The second one was so good from this gentleman, young man who was making these champagnes. And I trust my parents' palate. And I was like, well, have you ever exported to the US before? And Julien Tessier was like, no, haven't. And so I was like, all right, here's a cocktail napkin. I'm going to write, if you make me the exclusive importer, I'm going to build a company and a brand around it to support, the champagne. It's just too good not to let the French, that are here have it all to themselves. And he took him all of 30 seconds to go, okay, let's do that. And so I spent the next 2 years or 18 months building the logistics, and understanding the federal permits that are needed and partnering with the right people to be able to bring the products from the port in France to, the port in Savannah, Georgia, or New Jersey, and then figuring out now how to get it to us. And one of the most important things is that these are organic champagnes. They will not give you a headache because of what is not put in them. and what's not sprayed on the vines or put into the ground to boost the yield and all that. These are very naturally made champagnes with very little man-made chemical intervention. And so the result is it doesn't get into our bodies and create a histamine reaction, inflammation, and the headache that you get. At the same time, they're very delicate. So I spend the extra money, as I discovered, that you've got to bring them over on a chilled container at 57 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius. When you only 5% of all the wine from Europe to the US is ever put into one of these chilled containers, and I'm one of them.
Wow.
And you have to do that if you're going to not dull the wine from its most dangerous portion of the trip. And we all know this too. It's like if you're ever fortunate enough to go to a vineyard, you're like, wow, the wines taste so much better when you're there. And it's not just because you're on vacation, it's because it hasn't been damaged from the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you can meet somebody that's in your field or an entrepreneur or someone that you admire, spend some time with them. Who would you love to meet that you find fascinating on the planet right now?
I find fascinating on the planet right now. Um, you say that question, and the first name that popped in my mind was Robert Mondavi.
Yeah.
Um, a great guy who kind of figured out but even then, and he would tell me this, I know from studying and knowing him, is that you strike a balance between what you can provide on scale that's just by its nature can't be as delicate or authentic as what you can provide after you've done the scale job and you really just want to share something special. And I'm just in that space where we want to share something special. I'm not interested in like on steroids because so much gets lost as you start to scale and build and get to this feeding a worldwide demand. Champagne is the size of Rhode Island, right? I wouldn't want to walk it. So it's big, but the demand for it across the world as more and more people enter a better level of living. And I'm talking principally about from everyone from middle class in China to everywhere. Champagne is an aspirational drink. And so, there's only so much of it that can be made. Fact that I am looking for particular kinds of well-made, high-quality premier cru, as they say, and bringing it over, in such a delicate way, just means that these champagnes are not out of reach expensive, but they're about $20 more than what you would pay for the famous bottle on the shelf, kind of thing. And the trade-off, this is why we're talking, and this is why I try every day thinking about how do I build the awareness in a way that that means I can't be on the back page of every magazine or at the end of the ski run kind of experience, is bringing these champagnes over, doing so in a way that won't give you a headache, and yeah, I mean, telling that story about how good these champagnes are and the no regrets you'll get the next day when you drink them. But that story takes a little scratching, to find me. Once you do, then you don't go back.
For sure. So it's very clear with your career that your aim is to provide the pinnacle experience, but you've always strove to do better. That's just the kind of mentality that I've gotten from your bio and from what you've done. So my question is this, what gets you up every day? What gets you to pursue the excellence that is maintained and a vision that you have of where it can go? What is that for you all the time?
Well, it's a boy. What I even struggle through is there's a lot of humility. I mean, I make a lot of mistakes. I fail at this, but the idea is if you keep failing, great. You keep learning, and if you can fail but get better, every little bit by each day, great. Where I really get in trouble is where you're not changing and you're still doing the same thing over and over again. That's not good. And for me, I guess it's the inspiration that, yeah, I'm on this journey and I have a team and that inspires me. And, you know, frankly, every time, every time that I share the experience of these champagnes with somebody, it really does change their lives. And what I mean by, I don't mean to say that dramatically or theatrically, but if I have a saber in my hand and I show somebody like how to saber a bottle, it just blows people away. And I think to myself, yeah, this is the way you should open up a bottle of champagne. Okay. But this is also the way, without the theater, this is also how you should enjoy anytime. All of this is just another mechanism for saying we live our lives in such a digital and rushed way. How do we slow things down? Champagne is a drink that you cannot be, at the time that you're drinking it, anxious of the future or regretful of the past. It arrests you and brings you into this moment. And I like that. And I like sharing, how to put the brakes on and slow things down. You are never going to see somebody with a glass of champagne in their, and their phone in their hand,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So it takes us out of all the places, the race, and says, where am I right now enjoying this? And I try to say, it's not at a bar drinking the champagne. It's with these champagnes at a meal, surrounded by people you want to share the champagne with, leveling up whatever you're eating. I mean, some of these champagnes, they're not for the special occasion. They're for the Indian takeout that you have in front of you. And if you've ever had Indian takeout in these champagnes, you suddenly take Indian takeout to like its highest level that it
Yeah.
will ever be.
Yeah.
And you turn what is, takeout into like, oh, a reason to bring out like the nice plates and the napkin, and a glass of champagne does that because that effervescence matched with the curries and the incredible ingredients there with what's going on in that champagne, these champagnes especially, man, green apple and chutney and it's just insane. I could bring out another one, a rosé champagne, and say, boom, have this with chicken shawarma or
Yeah.
takeout or a gyro and a little bit of that tzatziki sauce that has the dill and the cucumber and the whew, and you have this rosé champagne, heart palpitations, like you're inside your socks, the toes kind of curl and you're like, oh, and you realize you're on a ride, like, oh my gosh. And I've seen that too many times to be like, I want you to experience this. Just like, because I get it tastes so good every time. I don't get tired of it. And that's the part what I want to share. So why not share something that takes people what everyone needs at some point? And by the way, these champagnes are not for everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. So I say that I alluded to it before, and I'm adamant about this sometimes to my own detriment. It's like I'm not looking to sell these everywhere. And frankly, you know, lucky you if you find them and I get to allocate, you get to get these champagnes. But the point I want to make is these champagnes are the reward for a routine that should be that I find the people who have an elevated routine about their lives. What does that mean? How they take care of their health, how they take care of their wellness, their self-care, is where I like to have these champagnes because those people appreciate. We're all through our busy lives. If you're someone who eats like bonbons and watches reality TV and just, and that's what you do, there's many other rewards you could have that would merit that routine. These champagnes merit a routine of people who are focused on their health, their self-care, so that they can do the things in the world that they want in terms of making an impact. That's where I want to. These champagnes are that reward for that routine. And so, why? Why? Because you drink them, you will not get a headache.
Yeah.
The $20 surplus over what you might find over on the shelf is because that you'll pay. In my mind, I'll pay that. You should want to pay that because you're not going to miss the workout the next day because you're laid out thinking, oh, what happened? It's not going to knock you out of that routine. In fact, it's going to leave you thriving the next day because I guarantee you, order a bottle of this, you share it with somebody, and you have it with food, you will not have a headache. And the next day you'll be like, "Wow, that was amazing. Let's go."
Yeah. Yeah. So let me ask you this. The thing about champagne is there's a level of sentimentality to it. Sometimes people save an empty bottle. Sometimes people will hold back on a full bottle. But in your life, in your collection, what's the most sentimental bottle you own?
Most sentimental bottle I own is Joe. That's a great question because I often tell people, look, don't save the bottle for the special occasion. You're the special occasion. Anyway, it's corny,
No, it's
but
good. It's great.
good, right? That lands. That's good.
Yeah, totally
You're the
lands.
occasion, right? You're not waiting for the special occasion when they come and pass you by. You're the occasion. And yet, I do have a special bottle. It is a Magnum And it was signed by everybody that was on my board, as I had the pleasure of leading a local chapter of a group of entrepreneurs in an organization that I belong called Entrepreneurs Organization, EO.
Yeah.
And it's a global organization. There are chapters all over the world. And again, I was fortunate enough to lead about 160 CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs for a year. And at the end of that, my board, they all signed it. So the day that I open that, it's going to be a special one. It's obviously going to be shared, with others. And but yeah, so
That's a great story. I love it. So that's the perfect natural lead in to if anyone wants to get a bottle, they want to reach out, they want to learn more, have any questions, any of the good business, where can they go?
a lot of people ask me that, and especially when I'm doing look like, where can I buy this? It's like, well, locally, I don't really. I put these in restaurants, in different key markets where we are, like in Texas and in Georgia, and soon in even in Tennessee. But if you don't live in those states, so be it. You can come to the website and we can deliver it to your door. So I'm only in those states when I'm trying to get to businesses and
Yeah.
I have to work through a distributor. But as an individual, you can come to avidvines.com and you can shop the collection that we have. And it's a little overwhelming because there's about 12 champagnes there. But we are, once you sign up for our newsletter, we kind of start to talk to you and we kind of say, look, and then we'll drop in a particular, this is the month where this champagne, this particular one is the one you should be getting. And you either trust us or you go out on your own and try the others in the portfolio. But the idea is to buy some and come back and buy some more because and by the way, so the champagnes come in a chilled container. Once they arrive, they've survived the most dangerous part. If they when you order it and it arrives at your door, it's not in like a chilled, smoking, container or so. But the wine has survived its most dangerous part. If it spends a day not in the refrigerator or not in the refrigerated, supply chain, that's okay. It's just avoided the 6 to 8 weeks on the water and stuck at port where these wines bake inside a container.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but you come to avidvines.com and that's where that's the way that frankly I love selling the champagnes because next to being in person, we send you, you join our email, our newsletter, and we just start to talk about just what I've talked about. Here's the supply chain. Here's the care that we're putting into bringing you the champagne and now what you can expect when you order a bottle. And then we send you all sorts of stuff, a wine wheel to help your vocabulary when you open up the bottle and you start to experiencing it. A wine wheel, by the way, is just a device. It's a graphic, and it helps avoid the one word that we take an effort to avoid you describing the champagne as, which is you pour it in your glass, you take a sniff, and you're, oh, how was it? Oh, it's good. No, 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 no. We can do better than good.
Yeah.
So the wine wheel helps your vocabulary to say, okay, beyond good, it's fruity. Beyond fruity, am I tasting citrus or berry? Citrus. Okay, citrus. Grapefruit, lime, lemon. No, berry. Okay, strawberry, blueberry, cassis. What? And it's just if you think, meaning if you become present and you think through your perceptions of what you're tasting, this is a way to get present, to be like, where am I right now? Where is this champagne taking? Where is this taste that I'm feeling taking me? Yes, it is fruity, and yes, I am getting something that's not fruity, but more like buttery, brioche.
Yeah.
Your mind goes, and then and when you share it, then you get to hear other people's perceptions.
Yeah.
And no one is wrong, by the way. No one is wrong. Don't let anyone frown. Whatever comes out, it's because it's you. It's your perception of it.
Yep, you got the vernacular. This has been fascinating. David, thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Joe.
I appreciate it.